Spain somehow has too many houses and not enough homes at the exact same time. In Lugo, a rural property listing offered what it called an aldea for 73,000 euros. Not a house in the village, the little cluster itself. 6 buildings, 13,000 square meters of land, a spring and a fountain. 3 of the houses still needed work, which feels like a detail the price was hoping you would discover emotionally. The listing had already been marked down. Apparently, the tiny abandoned village had potential, just not full-price potential. Meanwhile, near Madrid, a 33-year-old teacher sleeps in the bedroom she grew up in. Her parents are down the hall. Her grandmother has the 3rd bedroom. The arrangement is warm, practical, and increasingly permanent. Data from 2025 showed that 44.3% of Spaniards aged 26 to 34 lived with their parents. Nearly half said the main reason was that they could not afford to rent or buy a home. So, in the same country, a teacher can't afford to rent an ordinary apartment, while somewhere else, 6 buildings, a spring, and several fields are waiting for someone with 73,000 euros and a relaxed attitude toward renovation. Which is where someone with great confidence and very little follow-up says, just give the teacher the village. There. Done. She goes from owning nothing to managing 6 roofs and a water source. But her job is near Madrid. Her friends are near Madrid. Her parents are near Madrid. Her grandmother is near Madrid. So now she has 6 buildings that need repairs and a spring she did not ask for. We have not solved the housing crisis. We have accidentally given a teacher a part-time job in rural property maintenance. Spain's most recent published housing census counted about 3.8 million empty homes. At the same time, the Banco de España estimates that between 2021 and 2025, the gap between new homes and new households grew to roughly 750,000. On paper, this looks ridiculous. For every new home Spain needs, there are about 5 empty ones already sitting somewhere else. The arithmetic works beautifully. The map does not. 45% of Spain's empty homes are in municipalities with fewer than 10,000 people. Those municipalities contain only about 1/5 of the population. Cities with more than 250,000 residents contain almost 1/4 of the population, but only about 1/10 of the empty homes, meaning the houses are over here and the people who need them are over there. And houses are not known for their mobility. You cannot load a stone house from rural Castilla y León onto a truck and quietly slide it between 2 apartment blocks in Madrid. You can move the person, of course. Then the person starts asking irritatingly practical questions. Where do I work? Where do my children go to school? Is there a doctor? Can I buy groceries without turning it into a regional excursion? A house is not just a roof. It is a roof attached to a life. The rural numbers show why. Spain's rural municipalities held 13.3% of the population in 2021, spread across 73.3% of the territory. Most of the map had few people, and even that small population was shrinking, down 3.5% in 5 years, with the smallest places shrinking faster. People did not leave because rural Spain suddenly became ugly. A lot of it is gorgeous. They left because a gorgeous view does not pay you. In Spain's depopulation debate, you hear 2 expressions for the same map. España Vacía means empty Spain. España Vaciada means emptied Spain. One letter changes the entire accusation. The first sounds like the countryside simply emptied itself. The second points toward decades in which jobs, universities, hospitals, transport, and investment became concentrated elsewhere. People left. Schools lost children. Businesses lost customers. Bus routes became harder to justify, and every lost service made the next departure more reasonable. Not every village could have stayed full. Some decline was inevitable. But a village without work, transport, healthcare, or a school is not merely unpopular. It has become difficult to choose. Since 1999, there has been a citizen movement called Teruel existe, which translates exactly how you think it does. Teruel exists. When your political slogan begins by confirming that your province is real, the visibility problem is already fairly advanced. So maybe that's the wrong place to look. Maybe the answer is not to drag people toward the empty homes. Maybe it is to find the empty homes already sitting where people actually need to live. Leave the rural homes where they are. Use the homes that already exist in the cities. Except this is where the word empty gets slippery. An apartment can exist physically and still not exist as a normal home. The census identifies empty housing largely through electricity use. It does not check whether the bathroom works, whether 5 heirs agree on what to do with the property, or whether the renovation is now more of a family legend. A 2025 Fotocasa survey of owners found that the most common reason for keeping a home empty was that it needed work. Disagreements between heirs came next. Then there was fear. 18% cited possible non-payment or damage. Another 10% feared they might not recover the property if a tenant stopped paying. Those fears do not explain most empty homes, but they do change decisions. An illegal occupation, a legal tenant who later stops paying, and a seasonal rental are 3 different situations. In Spanish housing arguments, they are often placed in the same sentence, which is efficient for the sentence and terrible for understanding the problem. For an owner deciding what to do with one apartment, though, the distinctions may still lead to the same choice. Avoid a normal long-term lease. Sell it. Keep it for family. Rent by the room. Offer it for a few months. Or leave it empty and accept that an unused apartment earns nothing but causes very little hassle. And even when the apartment is up for rent, it may still not be available to someone trying to live there year-round. Seasonal rentals have grown quickly. In 2023 property listings, they represented around 1 in 10 rental offers nationally, and more than 3 in 10 in Barcelona and San Sebastián. You have probably seen that kind of listing. Available from September through June. Then, with remarkable punctuality, the owner develops an urgent personal need for the apartment every summer. The apartment exists. It simply belongs to a more profitable calendar. And some homes aren't waiting for tenants at all. 4 in 10 property purchases in Spain are now made without a mortgage, which tells you less about families buying homes and more about investors buying assets. When prices are climbing by double digits in a single year, an empty apartment isn't a problem. It's a portfolio. The owner doesn't need a tenant. The property itself is the return. At this point, simple math has failed twice. The empty homes are often in the wrong places, and the homes in the right places are not always available for ordinary long-term living. So the next answer seems obvious. Build new homes where people actually need them. Spain once built too much in the wrong places. Now it builds too little in the right ones. The old boom did not just leave empty homes behind. It weakened the system now expected to produce new ones. The Banco de España points to shortages of build-ready land and construction workers, rising costs, slow development, and regulatory uncertainty. More than half of the recent gap between new households and new housing is concentrated in 6 provinces: Madrid, Barcelona, Alicante, Valencia, Murcia, and Málaga. Those are the places where pressure keeps piling up, so the country needs homes fastest in the places where building them is most complicated. Demand can appear almost overnight. A teacher gets a job. A couple separates. Someone finally tries to move out of their parents' apartment. But an apartment block does not appear overnight. It needs land, permits, financing, workers, utilities, and a local meeting where everybody supports affordable housing in theory. And the moment a building is proposed nearby, the idea becomes a little too real. People start asking perfectly reasonable questions. What about parking? What about construction noise and dust? What about the street being a mess for months? And then, on top of that, everyone becomes a passionate local historian, explaining how that parking lot has been part of the neighborhood's charm since 1987. So basically, the teacher still lives with her family. The village remains available if she ever wants something new to worry about. But rural Spain isn't just there to make the housing math look funny. The harder question is how to reconnect homes, jobs, services, and people in places that have been losing them for decades. Efforts like Hola Pueblo help families and entrepreneurs move to depopulated municipalities. By 2026, the program said it had helped more than 215 people settle in rural areas and had created 58 businesses. That is not nothing. For those families, it may be the entire story. For a village that gains a shop, a tradesperson, or enough children to keep a classroom open, one arrival can matter far more than a national percentage suggests. It just isn't a national housing strategy. Spain's empty villages and impossible city rents are not opposite crises that should cancel each other out. They're what happens when the same country pulls too much life into too few places. Jobs, universities, hospitals, transport, public institutions, tourism, and investment gather in a limited number of places, and not all of that demand comes from inside Spain. Some people move for work or study. Some come to retire. Some arrive with foreign salaries and discover that Spain is affordable, as long as your income wasn't designed for Spain. This is where people start pointing at foreign buyers, remote workers, digital nomads, investors, retirees, and the general category of people who say expat with a straight face. That deserves its own video. But for now, they fit the same pattern. More money and more people gathering in the same places that were already under pressure. People and money follow opportunity. Housing doesn't follow nearly as fast. The places people leave lose residents, then services, then businesses. Their homes become cheaper, while the life around those homes becomes harder to maintain. The places people move toward have the opposite problem: more people than homes. One side has homes without opportunity. The other has opportunity without enough homes. The teacher never needed Spain to solve its entire housing market. She needed one ordinary apartment near her school. Somewhere else, a village needs one family, one business, one doctor, or enough children to keep a classroom open. On a national spreadsheet, those needs look as if they should find each other. In real life, they are separated by jobs, roads, services, contracts, fear of long court disputes, construction delays, and a map that keeps pulling opportunity toward the same places. Spain has homes without people and people without homes. Not because the numbers fail to match, because the country's opportunities no longer match its map. Teruel exists. The harder part is making that feel less like an announcement.